What is the cost of a dream? Not the kind of dream that you have while you sleep, but the dream that you hold within you. A goal or desire in your life that drives you and gives you purpose. It's difficult to comprehend how our goals and the goals of those around us interweave and affect our lives. Each person acts in accordance with their own goals, and in doing so affects the goals of everyone around them as the consequences of their actions come to pass. Every dream has a price, and as we go about our lives acting in the pursuit of our goals, that price is paid. As time goes on, the cost of our dreams increases. Some will find this cost to be too much and give up, or make a compromise that allows them the satisfaction of achieving something. Others may cling to the dream of another person and join them in their goal, following them in the hope that the realization of another's dream will bring a sense of purpose in their own life. For some, their dream is a wish so deep that it becomes their singular purpose in life. The cost of their dream is impossible to know until the day that it comes true, but they believe that no price is too high. The cost in time, in resources, in friendships, in lives is irrelevant, unimportant when compared to the ultimate goal of achieving their dream. But when the time comes and the true cost is revealed, will it be worth everything? This is a video about Berserk. Specifically, I'll be talking about the 1997 anime adaptation, as unlike later versions, it does the source material justice arc and the utter tragedy of the Eclipse. I'll be referring to the anime simply as Berserk, so later on when I mention the ending of Berserk, just know I'm talking about the 1997 anime adaptation, not the end of the manga, which has not yet happened. It's a deceptively complex story about finding purpose within yourself, the value of friendship and camaraderie, and the consequences of allowing a single goal to envelop your entire life and being. I will be focusing on the story as told by the anime, but I will use small examples from the manga to fill out context where necessary. If you haven't seen Berserk or read the manga, I highly recommend doing so before continuing with this video, as it truly is something worth experiencing blind. Otherwise, let's talk about Berserk and why the Eclipse is so heartbreaking. The Eclipse is the culmination of prophecy, fate, and the relentless pursuit of a dream. It is one of the most devastating moments in anime, manga, perhaps all of storytelling in general. The horrifying cost of unwavering ambition is laid bare, and as an audience we experience what I consider to be one of the most heartbreaking moments in all of media. To understand why this moment creates such a profound emotional response, we need to understand the history of those who it affects and the events that led up to this horrific moment. Guts is one of the most complex characters in all of fiction. On the surface level, he is a hulking, gigantic warrior who wields an almost comically large sword. He is bitter, filled with disdain towards others, and only feels at home on the battlefield, fighting for his life. He holds no one in high regard unless they can offer him a good fight, and in the end, all fail him as he slays countless foes on his meaningless journey through life. Guts was born as his mother died hanging from a tree. He fell into the mud where he would have died himself if it weren't for a passing band of mercenaries, one of whom took pity on him and adopted him. Shisu, the sort of but not really wife of the mercenary leader Gambino, would raise Guts until she died of an illness 3 years later. After this, Gambino subjected him to a brutal upbringing of violence and pain. Guts would be forced to train with a sword far too large for a child, instilling a level of strength unheard of for a child. He would partake in battles and make his first kill at the age of 9. Although he acted as a surrogate father to Guts, Gambino hated him and, in an act of unspeakable cruelty, allowed him to be assaulted by another member of his group for the price of 3 silver coins. After a battlefield injury left Gambino crippled, he became even more resentful toward Guts, and in a manic state, he attacked him. He revealed his true hatred towards the child, and all of the awful things that he'd done and let happen. He did this because of a misguided belief that Guts was cursed and was responsible for Shisu's death. He had always hated him. In self-defense, Guts was forced to kill Gambino and flee the mercenary group. He lived as a loner and grew into a formidable swordsman, offering his services as a mercenary to whichever army would pay him. While living this way, he sought to increase his strength as a means to survive the world that had been so cruel to him. Everything changes when Guts is attacked by a group of mercenaries known as the Band of the Hawk. His strength allows him to easily defeat the men who attack him, but upon encountering their leader, Griffith, he finally meets somebody who he is unable to defeat. After losing twice to Griffith, Guts joins the Band of the Hawk and begins to find a place where he belongs. For the first time, Guts is able to form true bonds with those around him. He grows to admire Griffith as a great fighter, leader, and tactician, as well as a man of true ambition. The trust Griffith places in Guts forms into a deep friendship between the two, as they embark on their campaigns together. As well as his friendship with Griffith, Guts develops meaningful relationships with the other members of the Band of the Hawk, particularly Casca, who he clashes with often, but ultimately deeply respects and eventually comes to love. Thanks to Griffith, Guts finds a sense of belonging that he's never known before, and is for the first time able to live a fulfilling life in the service of Griffith's dream. Griffith is the embodiment of ambition. He lives in service of one thing and one thing only, his dream. He was born into a family of no renown and despised his place in the world, vowing to rise above his birthright and into kingship. This ambition fueled everything in Griffith's life, and as he grew up, he became willing to do anything, sacrifice anything, in pursuit of achieving his dream. In his mind, others existed simply to serve his dream, and their suffering or death was never too high a cost, if the result was to further his goals. As he grew up, Griffith became beautiful and naturally charming. This, along with an unwavering determination, allowed him to attract a devoted group of followers, which formed into the Band of the Hawk. Acting as a mercenary group, they were distinguished by their prowess in combat, as well as the loyalty and solidarity between its members. Griffith treated the members of the Band of the Hawk with great respect, and in return, his followers showed incredible devotion to him. Many among the group viewed him as their savior, and they all believed he would lead them to glory. At the time that Griffith first met Guts, he was steadfast in his goals, confident that he had no equal and that his dream will be achieved just as he planned. His first encounter with Guts, however, forced him to question himself. He of course defeated Guts in combat, but never before had a challenger come so close to beating him. This was someone who would keep Griffith grounded, remind him that he was not invincible and that care must be taken each step of the way if his dream was to be achieved. As the Band of the Hawk continued their campaign, Griffith orchestrated brilliant military campaigns in service of the Midland Army, making use of every resource and tactic available to him. His ability to think 2 steps ahead of his enemies, along with his unparalleled level of care and attention to detail, allowed him to lead the Band of the Hawk into prominence and lift its members into the upper class of society. In doing so, Griffith not only furthered his own agenda, but also granted the dream of many of his followers, further increasing their loyalty and devotion to him. As we see Griffith knighted and gain favour with the king, we come to a turning point in the series, as the dynamic within the Band of the Hawk changes significantly. Their campaign as a military group comes to an end for the most part, and they begin to support Griffith in his political ambitions. As we come to this point within the series, we need to talk about Casca. I haven't really mentioned her yet, but as we reach the midpoint of Berserk and the Band of the Hawk's responsibilities change, we see her struggle with an inner conflict which deeply affects events that take place later on. While the majority of the Band of the Hawk view their ascension to nobility as an incredible achievement and a dream come true, Casca's feelings towards this change of dynamic are more complex. Being born in a poor farming village, Casca's early life was difficult. Her family struggled to survive, and when a wealthy nobleman offered to buy her as a servant, Casca's father took very little convincing to part ways with his daughter. It didn't take long before the nobleman's true intentions became clear, as he assaulted her at the first chance that he got. By pure coincidence, the Band of the Hawk were passing nearby, and Griffith, in an act which is unclear whether it was kindness or cunning, throws Casca a sword. He tells her that if she wants to survive, she must fight for it. Casca, in that moment, took up the sword, killing the nobleman and marking the end of her old life as she dedicates herself to Griffith and his dream. Casca would travel with the Band of the Hawk and become infatuated with Griffith. She saw him as her saviour and a symbol of strength and unity that brought her comfort. As long as she was near him, she knew things would be okay. Over the next few years, as Casca grew up, she became an exceptionally skilled and respected warrior, even within the male-dominated mercenary band. She excelled through sheer talent and determination, earning the role of unit commander. When first meeting Guts, Casca saw him as a threat to the balance of the group. His tendency to act on instinct and stray from orders made her distrust him. Her feelings towards Guts began to change. As they risked their lives for each other again and again, Casca began to respect Guts and care for him deeply. She sees that there is nothing Guts will not do for those he cares about, at one point fighting 100 soldiers single-handedly to save Casca from a brutal death. Her life with the Band of the Hawk forced her to confront the trauma of her past head-on as she becomes both physically and mentally strong, vowing that she will never again be subject to the abuses she suffered as a child, while at the same time learning to come to terms with her conflicted feeling towards Griffith and Guts. Deep down, Casca knows that Griffith's dream leaves little room for personal connection and that because of this, she will never be with him. And yet, she is so devoted that she chooses to dedicate herself to him regardless. As Griffith's dream becomes closer to reality, his personal connection with Casca loosens, and as his mind turns from battlefield victory to political intrigue, she has to learn to become content with a life of luxury. Happy that although her place beside Griffith on the battlefield as a mercenary commander has become less prominent, at least the Band of the Hawk is still together, and still has each other to rely on. As we come to this turning point in the story, Griffith and the Band of the Hawk are feeling invincible. They can see their dream coming true before their eyes. Griffith, with the help of Guts, is able to outmaneuver all of his political threats, and although doing so requires betrayal, blackmail, and the brutal murder of a child, an act which would affect Guts deeply for the rest of his life, things appear only to be looking up as everything falls into place. As Griffith begins courting the Princess of Midland, it is now only a matter of time until he's able to ascend into royalty and achieve his dream of having his own kingdom. Despite this, all is not right with Guts. For a long time, Guts had admired Griffith and wished only to live up to his expectations and call him his friend. But as time passed, he began to feel empty. He questioned, was this really his purpose in life? Could the dream of another truly be enough to give his life meaning? On the same night that Guts had assassinated a political threat to Griffith and was forced to kill the victim's child, Adonis, he comes across Griffith speaking with the princess. Griffith here expresses that he does not truly consider anyone his friend or equal. He believes that only someone who follows their own path in life and strives to realize their own dream can reach true greatness and truly be equal to him. Only someone who lives in this way he could call a true friend. This shocks Guts and confirms to him that he must search for his own dream. We see as the series goes on that Guts becomes more introspective, and in a beautiful scene overlooking the Band of the Hawk's camp after surviving his 100-man battle, Guts confides in Casca that he will see this war through with the Hawk, but hints that afterwards he wishes to leave. When the fighting is over and all is well for Griffith, Casca and the rest of the Band of the Hawk, Guts plans his departure. He will leave and head out alone. What he is looking for he doesn't yet know, but what is certain is that he can no longer live under the weight of another man's dream. One snowy night, Guts packs his things and walks out, hoping to go without being seen. Unfortunately, he's caught by Casca, who begs him to stay, as well as Band of the Hawk members Judo and Caucus, who ask Guts to explain his decision, but ultimately understand. As Guts reaches the edge of town, Griffith confronts him, having already been alerted by Casca to his plan. Griffith viewed Guts as much more than just a soldier in the Band of the Hawk. He was a trusted friend, an ally, and the only person he considered even remotely close to his equal. He believed that despite this, he owned Guts, and that he would fulfill his role as a confidant and right-hand man, and that this would continue indefinitely. The fact that Griffith's dream was no longer enough for Guts was unthinkable, and for the first time, Griffith experiences rejection and feels as though he may no longer be in control of his dream. He can't accept this. If Guts wishes to leave, he will need to defeat him in combat. Griffith, undefeated and having beaten Guts twice in the past, is confident and plans to end the battle with a single strike, just as he had when they first met all those years ago. A piece of snow falls to the ground, and the two men leap forward. Guts' sword cuts straight through Griffith's, and is held back only an inch away from mortally wounding him. Griffith had lost. Unable to comprehend what just happened, he falls to his knees, and Guts takes his leave in pursuit of his own dream. It's difficult to articulate quite how important this moment is. In a matter of seconds, the strength, certainty, unstoppable confidence of Griffith is shattered, and left in its place is an emotional instability and impulsiveness that he had kept hidden away his entire life. Guts' departure forces Griffith to confront a vulnerability that had always been there, but until now he'd been able to keep at bay. Griffith's decision to duel with Guts highlights an insecurity brought out by the simple notion of not being enough for someone, and his loss of that duel threw away any chance of hiding it again. In the wake of Guts' departure, Griffith begins a downward spiral into despair. In an uncharacteristically reckless move, he desperately tries to reclaim a sense of control and quell the rejection that he is feeling. He visits the princess, sneaking into her chamber late at night, seducing her. He does this paying no care to his usual careful and calculated persona. Unfortunately, this lack of subtlety results in him being caught by the castle guard. He is then arrested and charged with high treason. This single act of recklessness causes years of careful planning and maneuvering to be undone. Griffith is taken and imprisoned, his dream in tatters. Having lost their leader, the downfall of the Band of the Hawk was inevitable. They are immediately turned on by the Midland nobility and exiled, falling back into their old ways as an independent mercenary band. Casca takes on the role of leading the group, but without Griffith or Guts, they struggle to stay on their feet, and many of their soldiers abandon them. For a year, the Band of the Hawk struggle to survive, as Griffith is subjected to cruel and grotesque torture in the Midland dungeon. During this time, Guts travels alone, fighting in tournaments and doing his best to find his purpose. He eventually settles for a while, living with a blacksmith and his daughter. Here he trains and develops a bond with them both. After a year of soul-searching, he hears a rumour about an exiled band of mercenaries who are led by a female warrior, the Band of the Hawk. Immediately understanding that something must be terribly wrong, Guts tracks down his old friends and helps them fight off a surprise raid on their camp. Judo fills Guts in on the events of the past year. Now at their lowest number in years, Casca was barely holding things together and almost at the point of giving up. When Guts returned, she had not slept for days and was at her wit's end. Her feelings toward Guts had become confused. She was relieved and comforted to see him, but still held resentment towards him, blaming him for the downfall of the Band of the Hawk and for walking out on them. She attacks him, but Guts refuses to fight. Her anger directed towards him is the culmination of so much hardship and suffering. She tells him everything that's gone wrong is his fault, and Guts allows her to strike him. He explains that his leaving was the only choice he had, and Casca relents. She knows that Guts is not to blame, but she feels helpless, like nothing she can do will make things right again, and she just can't take it anymore. She takes a step towards the edge of the cliff that they are standing on, and falls backwards in an attempt to end her life. Guts narrowly saves her from falling, and he tells her to never do that again, and demonstrates that he will always want her to survive and be happy. In response to this, Casca admits that since the day he left, she had known that the one that she truly loved was not Griffith, but Guts. They confess their love for one another, and for the first time, find a true and deep connection within their embrace. Through shared experiences of pain, Casca and Guts understand each other in a deeply intimate way, and now, when things seem like they can get no worse, they find each other. Maybe there is some hope. Together, Guts, Casca, and a small team of the most highly skilled members of the Band of the Hawk put into action a plan to rescue Griffith. With assistance from an ally within Midland, they make it into the dungeon and travel downward into the depths. At the lowest level in the creeping dark, they find Griffith's cell, and within, they come face to face with what has become of their leader. Griffith had been stripped of everything that he was. Lying in the dark, unable to stand or speak, Griffith had spent the last year being subjected to unspeakable acts of violent torture. They had not only inflicted pain upon him, but systematically broken him. His tendons were cut, removing his ability to ever use a sword again. His tongue had been ripped out, destroying his once charismatic and influential voice. The pain he had endured left his body and his mind destroyed. The dream he had worked his entire life towards was dead. Guts, Casca, and the others are devastated at this sight, but continue their mission regardless. Griffith is carried out of the dungeon, and at the cost of many Midland soldiers' lives, brought back to the Band of the Hawk. The celebration and return to glory that was expected, however, is now impossible. This surely is a fate worse than death for Griffith. Although now free of the dungeon, his torture really will never end. To live mutilated and in the shadow of his former self is agonizing for him, a humiliation that will never end. As Guts discusses with Judo what will happen now, he is approached by all of the remaining members of the Band of the Hawk. They tell him that if he plans on leaving again, they will follow. They vow to journey with him wherever he goes, and whichever purpose he dedicates himself to. They know that if he leads them, they will always be okay. In this moment, surrounded by his friends and having found love through Casca, Guts realizes that perhaps this is what he had been looking for his entire life. He didn't realize it until this very moment, but everything he wanted back then is right here before him now. While Guts comes to realize that he can achieve his dream and live it every day, Griffith is spiraling further into the depths of despair. His dream is dead, and now that he has been rescued, the light of the world has brought his terrible fate into reality. And while he lay in the darkness of the Midland dungeon, he could view his downfall as a nightmare. It was now blindingly obvious what his life had become. Griffith hears Guts and Casca speak about him, his frailty, the burden he now represents, as well as their plans for the future. They have everything, and he has nothing. His mind reeling, Griffith seeks an escape. With the tiny amount of strength he has left, he grabs the reins of the wagon he was kept in and wills the horses to run. Riding faster and faster, in his mind he chases an image of his kingdom, the dream he worked his life for, now dead. Until, hitting a rock in his path, Griffith is thrown out of the wagon and into a shallow lake. He looks down and for the first time sees his reflection, finally seeing with his own eyes his terrible fate. Understanding the true completeness of his downfall, Griffith loses all hope and will to live. Seeing a sharp piece of rock jutting out of the water, he falls upon it and slashes his neck. As his blood is spilled and all hope is lost, Griffith looks up and notices something in the water floating gently towards him. The crimson bayolet. As the sky grows dark and the sun falls behind the moon, Griffith regards this object with curiosity. How did it make its way back to him? Any of you who have seen or read Berserk already will know that I've been leaving out a pretty important element of the story up to this point. The crimson bayolet is seen throughout the series in Griffith's possession. He wears it as an amulet, and it offers him protection and good fortune, at one point literally blocking an arrow from piercing his heart. It was given to Griffith when he was a child by an old fortune teller who foretold his conquest of the world. When Griffith is arrested and imprisoned, the torturer takes the bayolet from him and throws it down a drain, seemingly losing it forever, until it finds its way back to him at his lowest moment, floating toward him in the lake where he tried to take his own life. A bayolet is a small stone egg-shaped artifact with strange distorted facial features. Bayolets are imbued with supernatural powers and act as a link between the physical world and the world that lies beyond. They act as a transdimensional key and are primarily used as a way to summon the Godhand. There are many bayolets, but the one bound to Griffith is unique. It's known as the Egg of the King, and coming into contact with it marks a person as a chosen one, bound by fate to come into inhuman power. Throughout the series, this powerful link to otherworldly fate drove Griffith into the exact circumstances required to initiate a world-altering event, the Eclipse, and the summoning of the Godhand. Now, I've mentioned the Godhand a few times, and they're going to become real important real soon. But who are they, and why are they linked to Griffith's fate? Ancient, supernatural, and the embodiment of evil, the Godhand exists in a space between the physical and the astral world. A collective of 4 supreme beings, they manipulate the mortal world, spreading the influence of evil and seeing that corruption, despair, and suffering stay strong within humanity. Each member of the Godhands was themselves once a human, who by their fate came to possess the Crimson Bayolet and was able to activate it, thereby transforming them into a transdimensional being of immense power and a member of the Godhand. Every 216 years, the cycle of destiny is restarted, and a new member is added to the Godhand. Having been chosen by fate to receive the Crimson Bayolet, the destined one will be silently guided through their life, ensuring that they fulfill the requirements to ascend. Monumental despair and a harrowing sacrifice are a key part of their transformation, and even after a lifetime of manipulation, the final choice to accept the Godhand and take ultimate power at the cost of everything they once held dear is given to the chosen one. They must give themselves fully to evil, and of their own free will, truly choose power over goodness. Grotesque monsters are created, and these are the apostles of the Godhand. Former humans who, in a moment of greed or anguish, called upon the Godhand and were given a new body and terrible demonic power. The apostles serve by spreading suffering and chaos across the world. Many of the apostles possess their own bayolet, linking them directly to the Godhand and imbuing them with an immense level of power. When the eclipse draws near, the apostles journey to the site where it will all happen, ready to assist in the great sacrifice. During Griffith's imprisonment and torture, he was contacted by the Godhand, who told him his time was close at hand. They sent him visions of monsters and the astral world they inhabit. For Griffith, he could not know if what he saw was real or a manifestation of his broken, tortured mind. Guts, Casca, and the rest of the Band of the Hawk rush to help Griffith as he sits in the shallow water, gazing into the crimson bayolet. Slowly, the sun is blocked and the sky turns red. Griffith's blood swirls in the water of the lake, and the formless, unsettling features on the bayolet begin to move themselves into the image of a face. The eyes open, and it lets out an agonized wail as blood streams out of its eyes. The Band of the Hawk look on in confusion and terror as the world around them changes into a nightmare. The grassy hills are replaced with gigantic, distorted faces. The sun, now a black hole, deprives the world of natural light. All of his life, Griffith had been led down the path that would lead him to this very moment. And now, in attempting suicide, he demonstrated true hopelessness, despair, and anguish. In doing so, his crimson bayolet, the egg of the king, is activated, and the Godhand is summoned. As the apostles of the Godhand gather around, Casca tries to calm the Band of the Hawk, but apostles chant in unison, "The time has come." One by one, the foundings and towering monumental above all. They explain to Griffith that he is the chosen one, and the time has come for him to join the Godhand as one of them. He is destined to ascend to godhood and become a king. However, the final step in the process requires a sacrifice. Doing so, he will free himself from all worldly connections and begin the process of becoming a god. This choice must be made freely, however, and Griffith does have the option to decline. A towering hand rises from the ground and lifts Griffith. So, using visions of his past, they remind him of his dream and the suffering that had been endured in its name. Clearly, his dream mattered, and this is his chance to clutch back his destiny. Guts finishes his climb and are devoured alive, ripped apart, and die screaming. The confusion and pure terror they feel is unbearable. They don't understand what is happening or why it is happening to them. They only know that they have been betrayed by the man they once saw as their savior. Just as things had seemed to look up for them, at the very moment their fortune seemed to be about to turn in their favor, they were condemned to die in this nightmare world. Casca is unable to process the sheer insanity of what she's seeing. She stands rooted to the ground as she watches her friends die. She is attacked by an apostle, but Pippin stands in the way. She snaps out of her trance and tries to fight, but is quickly picked up by Judo as he grabs her and flees in an effort to save her life. She watches as Pippin is overwhelmed and ripped apart. Judo and Casca do their best to flee, but it's not long before the horse and then Judo succumb to the violence of the Godhand's evil apostles. They catch up to Casca and, in a depraved act of malice, decide to humiliate her before she dies. They slash apart her clothing and hold her up for all to see. While this unfolds, Guts tries in vain to break into Griffith's cocoon. The Godhand taunt him, telling him every single drop of his blood belongs to them now. Knowing he can't stop them, he decides to fight, killing many of the apostles as he tries to get back to Casca. He falls into a lake of blood, the bodies of the Band of the Hawk floating there, mutilated and dead. The apostles taunt him, puppeting their bodies around, proud of their work. And there, Guts sees Casca. Suspended high in the air, naked, traumatized, but still alive, Guts tries to reach her. His only thought is saving the woman he loves. As he desperately runs to her, he's caught in a demon's jaw as it bites down on his arm, crippling it. Guts is unable to move, and now can only watch. A deep heartbeat suddenly comes from Griffith's cocoon, and all goes quiet. The transformation is complete. Griffith no longer exists as he did before. Now, reborn, he is the newest member of the Godhand, Femto. Rising from a pool of sacrificial blood, he spreads black wings and approaches Guts. Deep hatred fills his eyes as he signals and Casca is brought to him. There, in front of Guts' very eyes, Griffith, now Femto, enacts the most emotionally devastating betrayal I have ever seen in media. Knowing of their love for one another, and in an act of despicable evil, Griffith violates Casca. Griffith takes immense pleasure in the anguish he is causing Guts. His strength is restored, and his dream never again will be threatened. But even so, Guts must be punished for obscuring the vision of his dream. And so he goes on, forcing himself on Casca. Guts cannot take this. He can't escape the grip of the demon that bites down on his arm. So rather than allowing Casca's suffering to continue, he takes his blunt, broken sword and cuts off his own arm, mutilating himself but freeing himself briefly. This is for nothing, however. As soon as he is free, more apostles take him to the ground and force him to watch as Griffith completes his utterly heinous act. As Guts watches, his eye is impaled on the claw of the apostle that holds him, and he screams, agonized in hatred of the man he once called his friend. And that's it. That is how the 1997 anime leaves things. We fade to white and the series is over, right there. This blind. I don't even think I can truly describe the emotions I was feeling as the screen faded to white and I realised there was nothing more to come. How could this be the end? Nothing was resolved. Everything was awful. I just spent an hour watching the characters I'd grown to love lose everything, die horrifically, and suffer the worst betrayal I'd ever seen. And the studio had the absolute balls to just stop right there. No closure, no explanation. I've never bought anything as fast as I bought the Berserk manga after finishing this series. I could not go on without knowing what happens next. And then I realised the ending of the anime is kind of genius. So often in film and TV, we return to the status quo. Even dark and ever-evolving shows have shocking moments and permanent changes that affect the entire storyline, but there is always something there for us to hold on to. Something gives the viewer a way to comprehend the things that are happening. That may come through context which isn't known until much later, but you always know that at some point you will understand. For a series to end as Berserk does, creates a feeling like no other. There is no justice, there is no closure, there is nothing. Just as we see the characters we love lose everything and die in horrified confusion, we end the series in the same way. It's a shock, a burst of chaos, a sudden and yet thought-provoking end. What is the cost of a dream? Berserk explores this question through every character we meet. Guts, Griffith, Casca, and all of the members of the Band of the Hawk, and even smaller characters I didn't mention in this video, all have their own dream. And their willingness to pay the price of their dream defines each character's story in a unique way. He touched the lives of many and developed deep relationships with those he spent his life around. And when he chose to leave the Band of the Hawk, this hurt them deeply. Even a dream that seems entirely noble has a price to be paid. And although Guts did shoulder most of this himself, the suffering of Griffith and the Band of the Hawk came as a result of this dream. Opposite to this, Griffith's dream was built on an external, material prize. Every decision in his life was made with the goal of becoming more powerful, more influential, until his dream could come true. Because of the grand nature of Griffith's dream, its cost was much higher. It didn't just affect the lives of others, it brought hundreds, maybe thousands of people to their deaths in battle. Those who followed Griffith, in the end, Griffith's dream cost him and all those who followed him everything. And when the eclipse took place and he was asked to choose, he decided that his dream was worth it. Griffith's dream came true because he succumbed to the hatred and the evil of the Godhand, as well as the inherent evil hidden deep within him. And as he is reborn as Femto, he is granted the power of a god. Evil triumphs while the purity of love and friendship is defiled and left to die. So what is the cost of a dream?